Hi guys, it's Steph from IDRIVEACLASSIC, and today I'm back driving one of my most favourite cars in the world, the MK1 Morris Marina, and it's not a 1.3, oh no, we've gone straight to the top. We've got a 1.8 coupe. It's amazing, look at the colour of it, it's mallard green, it's British Leyland. I think this is probably going to be one of my best videos ever, and I love this car so much, and I've been begging Joan to do this review for ages, so I'm so excited to show you. Now we're going to start the video off as per usual. We're going to take a tour around the car, and I just want you guys to bear with us because this is somebody's daily car. It's on over 100,000 miles on the clock, so look, it's incredible that it's here. It's a massive achievement. So we're going to have a look around the outside, take a look on the inside, start the car up, show you all through the dash, and then we're going to take the car out for a drive and we're going to have a chat about the experience. So buckle up because we're off out in a Morris Marina.
The Morris Marina is one of my favourite ever BL cars, and not owning one is probably one of my life's biggest regrets. They used to be so cheap years ago, so back in 2012 when I went to look at one they were just a few £100, but now you're looking at well over £1,000 in the UK for a decent one, and sometimes they're coming up at 2 or 3 and people are paying it because there's not many left, and the ones that are left you want to try and get a decent one. So I'm not sure what it would set you back to buy one abroad, but I'm hoping that somebody can tell me, but I definitely don't think they're the cheap classic that they once were, which in some ways is a good thing, but we'll get into that later in the video. Now if you're watching from abroad you might know this as the Austin Marina or the Leyland Marina, or weirdly they seem to be called lots of different things depending on where you were. They were also called the Morris 1700, so you may have known it as many different things. It's one of those things that when British Leyland exported the cars and sold them abroad they seemed to switch up the name a tad, but that wasn't something that was unique to British Leyland because it was something that you've seen other car manufacturers doing. For example, when I did the Kia Pride video, which if you haven't watched it you definitely should, it's a good video, a lot of people know them as Mazdas in different parts of the world, and it always surprises me actually because whenever I do these reviews I get comments from people across the world which always surprises me, and they'll say, oh, we knew it as this or we knew it as that, and it's just one of those things. But now that we're much more of a global society with things like the internet, you tend to see it a lot less. Now back to the Marina, released in 1971. It was introduced, now I use this very liberally, it was introduced to replace that Morris Minor, medium-sized Oxford Farina range of cars. It was that customer, although confusingly the Morris Minor Traveller continued to be sold. Well, in the UK I think it was until 71, 72, and then abroad up until 1973. So with things like the Morris Minor being so well, so well thought of, so highly regarded, for some people maybe they'd had them in the family for 30 odd years, it was a big thing for them to say goodbye to the Morris Minor and look at something like the Morris Marina to take over that family car place. And buying a car then was a much bigger deal than it is nowadays. I always say this in videos because I don't think we fully appreciate that. Nowadays, cars are so cheap and you get things on finance a lot easier, but back then buying a car was such a huge big deal. Now you got a lot of choice when you were picking a Marina. You could have gone for 2-door, 4-door, van, and in the UK you could have gone for a 1.3 or a 1.8 litre engine, and in later models a 1.7. And if you're abroad in places like Australia or South Africa, you could have picked up a Marina with something as exciting as a 2.6 E series, which is quite good. Bet they're fast. Production was just as diverse as your engine choices, and these cars were made in Cowley, England, so that's where your Morris Minor was made, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Malaysia and Malta. Now, like a lot of BL stuff, the Marina was marred by mismanagement and people just not listening or thinking commercially, which was the biggest downfall of BL. It wasn't the cars, it was really commercial thinking and joined up thinking. So they disregarded, for example, Roy Haynes, the designer's plan to install a shared floor pan, something that manufacturers happily do nowadays, to numerous design changes. So they just kept flip-flopping about essentially, and the car became a more financially draining project than what they considered to be the more advanced Austin Allegro. So with all the cost cutting, much needed ideas like abandoning a 4-speed gearbox, a new 4-speed gearbox, and stealing parts off the Morris Minor, which bear in mind had been knocking about since the 40s, it meant the car, whilst lovely, and look, I absolutely adore it, it didn't live up to the full potential. There are a lot of different things that they could have done to the Marina to make it a lot more advanced. I mean, if you look at the outside of the car, I think it looks quite zesty, it's quite cool, but it's that the mechanics and, you know, the running gear, it was just a little bit dated for what it could have been and compared to what else was out there in the market. Now, during the lifetime of the Morris Marina, over 800,000 cars were sold. It appealed to an everyday buyer, some fleet vehicle purchasers, and when they were purchasing, it was kind of only superseded by the Escort. Now, just due to things like chaos, BL strikes, all the rest of it, the Escort did pit them to the post on a lot of things. And for the demise of the Marina, sadly, a report in 2006 concluded it was one of the most scrapped cars in Britain, and now there are less than 300 left. So why don't we jump in and talk more about it?
Now, a lot of you gave me feedback that you love looking at the brochures when we looked at the P6 and when we looked at the Rolls Royce. So I snaffled through the glove box and I actually found this, which Joe tells me came with the car. So this would have been issued to every new driver when you got the book. So nowadays it seems that they only seem to tell you the very basic stuff, whereas back in the day you had adverts. So you've got adverts for Unipart. Allegedly Unipart means car luxury, and I'm not entirely sure that's true. Again, you've got like oil adverts. It's quite interesting, really. Like, you've got all these different bits and pieces that are going on. So, you know, I guess they would have funded some of this by selling the advert space as well, going into collaboration. British Leyland. And as we come through, so you've got all these specifications. I mean, look at this. It goes right into it. It's absolutely insane. So it was kind of expected at the time that you would have done a lot of bits yourself at home. So, you know, you've got everything in there from your routine maintenance. So let's skip through to routine maintenance, because I think this is something which is very different in older cars as to what you're expected to do, as to what you'd expect a garage to do for you now. So I guess nowadays it's something that you would take to a garage and do a lot of this yourself. So some of this is quite normal, where it's things like check oil. Yeah, I consider that quite normal. And they've also got them at maintenance intervals. So it was considered that you had kind of your A or your B option, which was A was 6,000 miles and B was 12,000, whereas on your cars like Morris Minors, these service intervals were a lot shorter. So I guess this was the point where you were getting to cars being more you know, being more reliable. And then, you know, you get through to things like the Metro, which came out in the last year of this being available, the last year of the Marina, and that boasted a 12,000 mile service interval, which they marketed as kind of, you know, don't check it from year to year, which I'm not entirely sure I feel okay about that, actually. So yeah, quite normal. But then we start getting to things like change engine oil. You definitely wouldn't do that at home on your normal car and your new car. Things like topping up carburetor piston dampers. And then it's, I guess, people must have been a lot more diligent, because, you know, you've got things like check for oil leaks, lubricate swivel pin. Again, you wouldn't do this on a modern car. And so I guess this is quite indicative, really, of, I guess, if you're looking to buy an older car, this is quite a good overview, really, of some of the stuff that you would have to keep on top of yourself to be a good owner, because anyone can be a classic car owner and run a car into the ground, but if you're going to do it properly, you do need to keep on top of things. You do need to be checking things, and this is a great benchmark of what you need to be doing. But look, you've got everything like lubrication charts. So yes, a lot more advanced. Again, like wiring diagram, can you imagine? God, I wouldn't want to tackle this. This looks a lot more complicated than what I'm used to. But yeah, like, look, you've got pages and pages and pages of information. So at the point of this being issued, we were still in that world where people would go to a garage, you know, for maybe more complicated things like welding or your MOT, because by this point MOTs were compulsory. I think they became compulsory in 1967. But yes, a lot of different things going on, but I thought I'd just show you that because it's always really interesting to understand the culture as well as understanding the car. So yes, now we've done that, I think it's high time that we had a quick look around the dash and we started the car up. Before we set off on our drive today, I wanted to show you the dash of the car, because for me it's a very different car to some of the other stuff that you could have got in 1971 when this car was released. So being a Mark 1, there weren't really changes between 1971 and 1973 when this came on the road. So I'm going to show you the dash today, and to give you a bit of perspective about what else British Leyland was selling at the same time. Can you believe that you could have bought, the year that this car was bought, you could have purchased a Morris Marina Traveller or this? So when you have them side by side on a forecourt, this would have looked a lot more advanced. I know maybe they're not the same customer base, but it shows you the mad breadth of what they were selling at the time, which I don't think you'd see from a manufacturer nowadays. So let's have a look at the dash and we can talk through it, and I'll show you some of the stuff. So it starts off pretty straightforward over here. You've got your glove box, and that little circle thing that you can see that twirls round, that's your heater. In the middle here you've got your speaker. So this is obviously for radio or cassette player, and then this here, this is Murphy cassette player. Now this isn't the original. Joe, who owns the car, said to me that it was put in the 1980s, and he knows this for a fact because he's got the receipt for it. So I love little facts like that. Now I'm just going to show you some of the other bits here. You've just got your ashtray here, like any good 70s car, a dubious ashtray or two here and there. You've got a cigarette lighter over here, you've got your warning light here, you've got your heater. So this is your heater here. Now this this right now is set on low, so you've got 2 speeds for your heater. So this is low, high and off. So we'll leave it on low. It's so cold today, by the way, hence why I've got a big coat on, because I've been totally spoilt in Jill. She's been so warm, it's been like Barbados, and now I've got the grim reality of stepping back into a 60s 70s car and knowing that I'm definitely going to be cold. My feet are freezing. So if you're watching from abroad, because I know some of you guys are, count yourselves lucky that it's a lot warmer there than it is here, because we are all so cold. So anyway, going back to the dash, you've got your heater controls over here. And then looking straight what's in front of me, you've got 3 dials. And then again, you know, for me this is a really good thing, because when I've driven my Morris Marina, I've often thought I could do with a few extra dials and dashes. So over here you've got your speedo, your centre is your fuel gauge, and also your temperature gauge as well. And that was never something that I had on my Morris Marina, and I think it's so important, because if something goes, like for example your fan belt goes, which means that your water pump isn't going and your car's about to overheat, you get you actually get a bit of a warning, because you can see it happening. Or if your head gasket goes, or if something's not quite right, you get a much better early warning system than some of your older cars where you haven't got that in, and the first thing you know is because the car starts running badly, or in worst case scenario your car cuts out, your head gasket goes. So for me, I know it might seem silly, but something like that would be a huge bonus for me if I was going back in time and buying this new. And over here you've got a rev counter. I mean, it's a bit advanced, isn't it? Now, talking about the theme of things being a little bit more advanced as you go through, you've got, so this was, I'm going to put my little geek hat on now and tell you something interesting. So standard on these was a 2-speed wiper, but this also has, you know, like the occasional, well, I don't know what the correct name for it is, someone's going to correct me, the occasional wiper, you know, you pop it on and it comes on occasionally, intermittent I think it would be. And the horn sounds fantastic as well, so I think it's on this side. Let me just check it. No, of course, that's the windscreen washer jet. I've made myself look like an idiot. But you know what, we'll just roll with it anyway. So this is your horn over here. It sounds a bit like a boat, so it sounds like I'm about to moor this thing. Have a listen to this. I'm just going to check there's no children around, because it's quite alarming. Hold on. I quite like that. Ridiculous. Oh, then you've got your rear heated screen button over here. So come on, Joe, come on in. Can you see? So just down here you've got rear heated screen, you've got your hazards, and weirdly, and this is something I don't like about the Marina actually, is you've got your lights over here. Like, I always forget to put them on, and then you've got your choke, and of course an extra heater over here. And one of my favourite features, of course, is you've got the Leyland roundel in the middle of the steering wheel. But like a lot of steering wheels of this age, they have this, which is built in allegedly so that if you have an accident you're less likely to be hurt, but look, I wouldn't take that as gospel in 2019. And then you've got your Bakelite steering wheel as well, and like a lot of cars of this era, it's starting to deteriorate slightly, but it's one of those things. It's, you know, I don't imagine when they made these cars that they thought they would last this long. So yeah, now that we've had a look round, let's start the car up. Now, before we set off, let's start the car. So if you've not seen, well, if you know a little bit about Marinas, you'll know in the early days you could have got your A series 1275, or you could have got a B series. So this has got a B series 1800, and it's still relatively easy to get parts for as well, because it shares it with an MGB. So for anybody who says, oh, the engine's not reliable on a Morris Marina, yeah, but I bet you're loving the MGB, aren't you? So wind your neck in. Now, let's start the car, which is one of my favourite bits of the video, and I know that a lot of you guys enjoy as well. So you'll hear there, the heaters come on. Let's start the car. Sounds good, doesn't it? But again, it's a big step up from those 60s cars where you were, honestly, some of them are so loud because there's just no insulation whatsoever. So look, this is probably going to be quite a biased review from me because I love the Marina. I wanted one myself. I ended up with a second Morris Marina because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I particularly like this car as well because it belongs to my best friend and I love driving it. I've driven it loads before, and it's got some great memories. We've been to some great nights, we've done all-nighters in it, like we've done all sorts. It's an amazing car, and it's got such good heritage as well within our friendship group and just in Joe's life as well. And I think it's quite remarkable really that somebody is dailying a car that many people consider obsolete. There's barely any left on the road, the parts are just not available. So today's review is probably going to be super positive because for the many reasons I've listed, and also because, you know, I love British Leyland. So we started the car up. I think it's high time that we headed off, took this car for a drive so you can see what she's really like. So guys, I've been out in this car now for about 10 minutes, but it didn't take me long to get my head back around it at all. The last time I drove this car, so confession, because, you know, I like to share the little ups and downs of motoring with you all. So the last time I drove this car was when I got my hair done in July time, and I had a particularly rotten day, and I'd been out in Martha and I'd noticed the clutch was slipping, and I didn't quite understand what was going on. Anyway, the gearbox blew up a day later, and now the crank oil seal's gone. So anyway, Joe was very kind because I said I can't possibly live without my hair being done, first world problems, and he said to me, right, well, don't worry about it. He said, you borrow the Marina and have fun. So I had a lot of fun actually. I drove it round, I drove it all the way to Manchester. I had a really fun day actually, and yeah, so ever since then it was one of my favourite cars already to drive, but it's even more my favourite now. And I think one of the things I do want to talk to you guys about is that this is a daily car. Now I've already said it at the start of the video, but I know there will be some people that say, well, you know, there are people out there that have concourse marinas, there are people out there who have museum worthy cars, but for me, yeah, that's great. I mean, look, if you want to go and see a museum worthy car, go to the museum, because what I love about taking out cars like this is just their heritage, their spirit, and I always think that a daily car has a lot more life in it. And I think it's because it's a combination of like memories, it's a combination of all the different things going on, but most of all I tend to find cars like this that look a little bit well loved are always a lot more reliable. Now, coming out of this today is such a privilege because it's one of my favourite cars, as I said, and it's a car that I've known for quite some time. So when I first met Joe, who owns this car, we met through Instagram, which is, at the time, was probably a little bit weird actually, but we started following each other because we liked each other's cars. And I remember he messaged me, and we barely knew each other, and he was like, oh, I'm getting a Morris Marina. And I said at the time, I was like, oh, I'm so jealous, you'll have to let me drive that one day. And time passed, lo and behold, he moved to Huddersfield, and eventually I got my hands on the keys for this car. And I remember thinking, my God, what an enormous car. I thought it's going to be so difficult to drive, and I wish I'd kind of filmed my reaction at that point, because I was almost a little bit nervous, because I was like, for me it looks like a huge car, and I was a bit scared. But anyway, because I'm an idiot, I just was like, right, just give me the keys, I'm going to crack on. And I drove it round, and I'd heard all sorts of bad things about marinas. Not that it would put me off, because I've been trying to actively buy one for quite some time, which hasn't worked out for me. I've ended up with a Metro. And I remember at the time I was like, oh, you know, I've heard lots of bad things. People have said they're quite tinny, quite rattly, that they handle like an absolute pig, that they're one of the worst things that British Leyland have ever made. And I'm here to tell you today that none of that is true whatsoever. I would say handling wise, because I think that's the thing that people get most het up about, handling wise, it's probably average. So I don't think it's really any worse than anything else that was of a comparable price range at the time. I think it's just that people get a bee in their bonnets and they love to hate cars. So for example, the Allegro is another car that people love to hate. Oh, the Allegro this, the Allegro that. You hear all sorts of bad things about the Allegro. But again, that's quite a nice car to drive. You know, I'm under no illusions that, you know, say if I took this out versus a modern car, this would definitely be more fun. I'd definitely have heaps more fun in this. But handling, no, yeah, your modern car probably would handle a lot better. And I think this is the rut that people sometimes get stuck in as well, is that people have been in their modern cars for so long and they get back into something like this that they totally forget what a 70s driving experience was like. And so for me, I just love it. I just think it's great, and I think that it's quite quiet as well. So I mean, look, as I said before, there were cars on the market at the time, like your Morris Marina, for example. Yes, it wasn't brand new, but this shows what a step up it was. This is so much quieter. The seats are so comfortable, so they're a little bit wider than say your Morris Marina seats. For me, it's a beautiful step up. I love driving it. It's quite easy to handle as well. It's quite responsive. You know, you can whip it around a corner. You're not worried. People always go, oh, they topple over. No, they don't. And as well, another complaint that I always hear, because I think before we talk about the whole driving experience, let's talk about some of the complaints and some of the bad things I've heard about Morris Marinas. Number 2 is, you know, oh, it's not reliable, the running gear is rubbish. It's exactly the same. So it's either your A+, which you know, was put into your Metro, your Minis, all that 1275 A+ world. You know, the A series engine is so highly regarded. You know, they used it from the 40s all the way up until, you know, 2001. It's not a bad engine. And then your B series, you know, as I said, they put it into stuff like your MGBs. It's not a bad running gear. They're not bad cars. It's just bad PR. I think it came at a very troubled time in the Leyland history, you know, the 70s, where it was strikes, it was build quality wasn't being monitored properly, and little things like this. And it's something that, you know, modern manufacturers can really take heed from, is that it was that dubious build quality, it was strikes, it was people not thinking that British Leyland were turning out good cars. It was all the accumulation of things like that, plus, you know, Bob's uncle's grandma's cousin had one and it broke down and it wouldn't start in winter. But look, this car that you see here today that I am driving is on over 100,000 miles from new, and it's still going. It's still being used daily. It's used for work, it's used for university, it's used for all sorts. And I think what will kill this car off is not the car itself. I think it'll be the parts supply, because the parts supply on these cars is, well, pretty much non-existent. You can barely, I know that you can't really buy any body panels new, at least with the Metro you can usually track things down quite quickly, but with this, you know, you can't track anything down. All your engine and stuff you're fine for, because, you know, it's shared with the MGB, so people have kept on top of that. You can still get all the parts for it. Again, your A+, you'll be able to get everything for that, because I can for Jill. But it's those body panels, it's those trim panels, and I know that some of you are so eagle-eyed and you spot stuff that even I don't spot. Some of you will have spotted that when we saw the back light that it was held on with sellotape, but Joe was actually the victim the other week of somebody reversed into the car and drove off, which I think is one of the most horrendous things that you can do to somebody. And then last winter, somebody, it's not had much luck in this car, last year somebody crashed into the front of Joe and drove off, and it was so loud that his neighbours woke up. He didn't. His neighbours woke up, and the person still drove off. I mean, it's not fair. It's things like that that I think have made this car maybe look a little bit more well loved than you might expect. And it's, you know, it's just that case of Joe is now on the hunt for panels. Very kindly, Martin Wallace, who's in the Marina Owners Club, he's also in the Morris Marina Owners Club, so hi Martin if you're watching, he very kindly sent out a light lens to Joe, so that'll be going on once it arrives. So yeah, so look, you know, it's cars like this aren't kept alive by people like Euro Car Parts. They're kept alive by your owners clubs and the people within the owners clubs, and I guess the sheer passion of some people, because I know that for anybody who's anybody and into marinas, you'll know who Josh Ward is. So that's who owned this car before. Josh Ward owned it before Joe. Very briefly, I might add, Joe's the person who's put all the mileage on, nearly half the mileage in fact. Yeah, so Josh has been very helpful as well. So I guess the thing that keeps these cars going, as far as they have done so far, is that the owners clubs are so passionate, and that people that are involved with the cars are willing to share parts or help people locate stuff. And yeah, I think this car's had a totally bad rap so far, and doesn't deserve it at all. It's a brilliant car. Now, one of the things that I most like about Joe, the owner of this car, is he's just as ridiculous as me, and also horribly stubborn, just like me. And I said to him, so he didn't want to be on the camera today, which is fine, not everybody does. And even though I've been like, please come on the camera, I'll buy you breakfast. He won't do it. So I'm just going to tell you what he told me. So I said, why did you buy this car? Because Joe is actually from a Ford family, so he's got a Ford Anglia, his mum's got the Cortina, his dad's got the Zephyr. If you haven't watched the Zephyr video already, you definitely should. But I feel like his family is slowly coming round to British Leyland because his brother's got that freight Rover that I did. And so Joe had an Anglia, and he'd heard all the bad things about Marina, and he saw it advertised and he said, you know what, I'm going to go and get it, it'll be a laugh, I'll have it for a little while. And Joe is slowly becoming brainwashed into the world of British Leyland, because a little while has turned into, how long have you had this car?
Nearly 5 years.
Nearly 5 years, have you? God, have we known each other that long? Christ, that's a long time. Yeah, so he's had it nearly 5 years, which is, you know, quite a considerable amount of time for someone of his age to have owned a classic. A lot of people get them, they either run them into the ground or they change their mind. So I think this car now will probably be with Joe for good. If not, I've asked for first refusal, so it definitely won't be going missing anytime soon. And of course, he also owns Mary, the Morris Marina, who's currently having a little bit of winter TLC. So I think Joe's gone firmly from being a Ford man into a British Leyland man, which is all good by me, because I think it's definitely a manufacturer of well, a houser of many different brands. Daimler, Jaguar, Triumph, Austin, Morris, just rattle them off, Rover. So yeah, so look, it's British Leyland's great. A lot of people do it down, but I think you've got a lot of cars with a lot of different characters. And as actually Joe and I have discussed before, it's very easy to love a car that everybody else loves. For example, the Anglia or a Cortina, or like a lot of people love Golfs, a lot of people love Minis. It's sometimes a lot harder, and it's actually a lot more fun to love a car that people totally underestimate, because when you've heard a lot of bad things about a car and you get in and you get to drive it, it's sometimes more fun than getting into a car that everybody loves. For example, when I got into that Beetle, I had really high hopes and it didn't do it for me. I didn't enjoy it. Whereas this Marina, I've got in it time and time again. I've never had a bad drive in it, and touch wood, I've never known it to break down, especially not when I've had the keys. The gearbox is smooth despite doing over 100,000 miles. As you can hear, it's the only rattles that we really get are when we're going over the giant moon crater like potholes that exist around West Yorkshire. It's a great car, you know, and Joe does a lot of miles in it, and for me that's what makes a good classic. Is it reliable? Is it fun to drive? This is definitely fun to drive. Is it easy to drive? Yeah. And those are the things that make it for me. And you know, is it funny? Like, is it going to make you laugh? I like a car that makes me laugh. I drive a beige Metro, for God's sake, and this car makes me smile too. I mean, you get in, it's the lime flower trim, it's the brown dash, it's, you know, the mallard green paintwork. I just love all of it. It's so 70s. The whole intoxicating combination of it is so 70s. The heater's pretty good for me. Again, another plus point on an old car. Anything without a heater is definitely off my list, because I'm such a cold person. I'm always cold, and I just love it. You know, the speaker's great. We can't put it on because YouTube will demonetize my account and tell me off. But like, everything about this car for me is superb. I love driving it. I love being a passenger in it. We've gone great distances in it as well. So with this being a 1.8, Joe could do motorway miles with great ease, and we've gone all sorts of places like London. We're off to Kent in a couple of weeks in it. Lincolnshire, Joe's forever backwards and forwards to Lincolnshire. In fact, the mileage that Joe does in this car actually makes me wince, because I've known him sometimes to do, you know, great hundreds of miles in a week and go, no, it's fine. And it's because it's a real testament to the driving experience of this car and what a beautiful car it is. And so yes, if you're at home and you sat there and you've only heard bad things about Marina, I would say to you, get in one, either as a passenger or as a driver, and experience it yourself, because I honestly think you'll be pleasantly surprised. This car for me is just everything. And this marks the end of my video on the Morris Marina MK1. I've had such a laugh today showing you guys the car, talking to you about it, and hopefully for those of you out there who are a little bit negative towards British Leyland and the Morris Marina itself, hopefully I've gone a little bit on the way to helping you change your mind, because it's truly an exceptional car, and I think one that's massively underrated. So if you're looking for a classic car for yourself, or you get the chance to test drive one, I would say grab the opportunity with both hands, because it truly is a remarkable car. Now until next time, take care and drive safely.